Right. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We have quite a few people joining, and I can see more are joining. So you're welcome. Thank you again for joining us for the session. We're actually quite excited. My name is Rohit. I'm the Global Sales Director for Zap, and I've got David with me, who's one of our pre-sales leads. And we are starting a series of sessions where we want to talk about complex ERP reporting. I think some of you who are there on the call, you've met us, seen us in person, and we talk a lot about data warehousing and why it's important and data models and all of that great stuff. But I'm not going to bore you with that on these sessions. These sessions, we want to focus purely on ERP reporting and complex ERP reporting. I want to pick a topic around that and talk about what is simple, what is complex, what are we building, and we want to try as much as possible to build on the fly in front of you using the tools that we have around the product today. So today's session is focused around P&L reports. P&L reports, I mean, I think a lot of people joining, and I can see some names here, familiar names, where you're probably far more intelligent than both me and David combined in terms of understanding the need for P&L reports and why they exist and so on and so forth. So the purpose of today's session is not what is a P&L report and why is it important. I think the purpose is, in our experience, what is a simple P&L, what is a complex P&L, and what have we actually seen people develop with us, and more importantly, the role of Excel in this. As much as we would like, Excel is a tool which exists in businesses, and I just don't see how it will ever not exist, especially with finance people who do not trust me or the tool or any BI tool apart from their favorite tool, which is Excel, including my CFO, by the way. So that I see happening, continuously, and we have an Excel add-in as well, which is what we'll be using to talk about P&L reports and build some P&L reports in front of you on the fly. Just from a customary perspective, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with these webinars. There's a chat section, there's a Q&A section. Please, if you get a chance, if you have a question, please pop it in the chat, and we'll take it up towards the end of the call. This session is being recorded, and you will receive a recording of this after the call. And by all means, if there is interest, please reach out. We would be very happy to showcase what we're doing here with your data. I'll stop talking now. There are plenty of people here now, so I'm going to pass it over to David. And David, the floor is all yours, man.
Perfect. Thank you, Rohit. And welcome again. Just before I start, Rohit, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen and I can hear you.
Well, perfect. Thank you again. I'm David, and I will be the presenter for today's session. And I'm very glad to be here with you today. Just to ensure the best possible audio experience, I recommend you wearing headphones so you can hear me clearly. Okay, so imagine a world where the data insights are not locked behind exports, but instead they are available instantly, centralized, governed, and ready to be used in tools that you already know. A world where your financial team, your data analyst, your operations team can access the same truth of data, one single truth, using the tools that work best for them, like Power BI, Excel, or Zap. So this world is here, and that's what we are going to be exploring in today's session. So today's session is called Chaos to Clarity, Building a Dynamics P&L. So Rohit already gave a bit of context about this. I'm not going to spoil it, but basically we are going to be exploring how to create Excel reports from a centralized place, a centralized truth of data that everybody trusts, right? So it's not only about what you report, but where and how you can report it, right? So before we jump into the demo, I want you to close your eyes and take a moment to walk through a scenario that many of you, I'm quite sure you will recognize. Imagine that it's the end of the month, and I'm sure that your financial team is under pressure. The reports are due, leadership wants answers, and the numbers. And well, we are all over the place, you know. The data, some data is in the ERP, in certain tables. The budget is in Excel. Forecast is in other folders. And suddenly, all of this becomes a manual marathon. So we fall back in the solution and in the tool that it's our best friends and that we know the best, which is Excel. We go, we export, we paste, we copy, we adjust formulas, look B, look H, we reformat. Hour goes by, and then mistakes can happen. And the worst part of it is once we think we are done with this process, the cycle starts again, and we need to be ready for the next month. And the reality is that this is not just frustrating, this is delaying our decisions, it's hiding risk. And you know, for many of our businesses, this means missed opportunities. So, what if the problem wasn't really Excel, but how we feed it? What if all the fragmented data that we have from our ERPs, from budgets, from forecast, could be centralized, prepared, and up to date? And what if your users and you could still work in Excel, but without all that manual work, without all those manual exports, and with completely trust on those numbers? So that's exactly what we will explore today, how Excel can connect directly to a centralized bucket, to a centralized place that contains all your data from ERP, Excel, budgets, files, and other systems. So no more manual exports. We will show you how this consolidates, governs, and centralizes data in one single source of truth. And, and how we will be able to consume this in solutions that you are already familiar with, like, Power BI, SAP Analytics, or Excel, which is where I'm going to concentrate my attention today. So now, before I jump into the demo, I want you to take just a moment to think about, those scenarios where Excel still matters. Think about this. Many of us, we already have a financial reporting solution. It can either be SAP, reporting solutions, Power BI. But yes, we cannot neglect that financial teams already know and love Excel. And what SAP does, we centralize the data and we clean that for you. But the real magic happens when these two come together, so we can solve actual financial problems. So I'm going to walk you through three main and key areas where Excel plus SAP unlock real values and where traditional BI solutions actually struggle. So the first block that I want to talk about is when we have critical financial formats. So many times we do have our standard financial statements, but we then find that we need to have them in IFRS formats or in a GAAP formats, or we need to prepare, an Excel file that contains many sheets for the booth, for a specific ready layouts, or some government instances. And those reports require certain custom row structures, subtotals at specific levels, multi-level headers, and or even to make some comments, right? So these formats, although you can create the reports, we will struggle to replicate these formats and structures in Power BI or standard a dashboard or in SAP. And if you are sending reports external to shareholders or boards, layout matters. So with this SAP Live add-in that I'm going to show you today, you will get full control of formatting, and you will get the ability to comment, annotate, present insights. So it's just not about having one report, it's about the financial team feeling home. The second part is about flexibility for analysis reporting. So many times, and I'm going to show you some use cases around this part, we have certain classifications or certain data that is not available in the ERP, it's not available in the system. Sometimes we use a quite complex formula, a specific ROA formula that requires information from multiple sheets, operating margins. So, adding those complexities in the system, in the data source, sometimes can be quite challenging. So I'm going to show you how we can drill down into this during the presentation. And the final part, as I mentioned before, we already know how to use Excel, right? Financial teams already know this tool. We know how to exploit it. We know how to do budgeting, actuals versus actuals, forecasting. So having this capability will actually help to democratize more the analysis, right? So more people can explore the information in the solutions that they are already familiar with, right? So I'm just going to jump now into the presentation, into the demo. So I'm going to stop presenting. So please let me know if you can see this presentation finishing. Super. So in Rohit, can you see the dashboard, SAP?
Yes, I can see that.
Amazing. All right. So I'm opening right now a typical dashboard. And as I mentioned, the foundations of all of this reporting is about having one source of truth, right? Where it's combining information from multiple places, ERP data, external data sources, forecast, budgets. And this is what I'm getting here. But let's be honest, although this dashboard looks fancy, it's a nice looking dashboard, the reality is that sometimes we start the analysis with a financial statement, right? And I am using on purpose this financial statement because what we have here, although we are centralizing the data, we're extracting the data behind the scenes in ZAP, we are organizing the data based on this chart of account structure. We are presenting information of actuals on the month-to-date basis versus the year-to-date. And we are even consolidating information from multiple companies in the data warehouse. We have budgets, ledger types, cost centers. We can break this data by financial dimensions. I realized that there's something missing in this report. I am missing the operating expenses, all the expenses, the budgets. And this is typically something that we see with many of our customers. And I just want to centralize my attention on this, which is a common problem that we see with our customers, where, we're not capturing the budgets in the standard tables that exist within the ERP. Sometimes we capture the data in external files like Excel files. So many times what customers used to do, they used to go into these three buttons. And this is not only in this reporting solution. I have seen this with any other business intelligence solutions or even in the ERP. We just manually export the reports into Excel, right? But where I'm going to centralize the conversation today is about this new SAP Live in Excel, which will basically allow me to have like a mirror of this report. I'm going to download it here. It's going to be this one. And it's going to allow me to have this live connection with this report. So it's like a replica of this report in Excel with the same structure, the same components, the same slicers. We will see even the same company, date, business scenario, ledger type, and cost center. All of these slicers that we have, we will see it in my download. So let me go to the download folder. And let me see if I actually have it here. There we go. I'm actually opening it. And okay, Excel is complaining a little bit. 1 second. Let me try again. And I will click on this enable editing. So what is this Excel add-in about? Well, I'm downloading the report. And in order to visualize and to open this report, I need to have access to the data, right? And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to line in because all of this is about democratizing reporting, about democratizing analytics, but also we need to control who has access, right, to which portions of the data. So I logged in. My credentials were already stored. I already had the session inside. And I realized that I have this profit and loss statement. But what I find here is that, again, the budgets are missing. So what I'm going to do is, in a normal scenario where you're using a data warehousing solution and a BI, you will need to either populate the analytics in the ERP and then process the data model, and then finally you will visualize this. But many times we want to be more agile. Sometimes we want to do this more on the fly. Sometimes we don't want to wait and to process the data model. It's more simpler just to enter the data here, right? So that's where I'm going to centralize this first part into how we can, use data that we trust, a report that we trust, a data actuals that we cannot modify, but how we can actually insert budgets into this report, which, from the BI perspective, in any BI solution, we cannot enter data, right? Because otherwise we will be losing the main objective, which is, trusting the data. So going back into the Excel file that I have here, I want to talk about what is this Excel add-in. So this is a new feature that we have released a couple of months ago. We will be able to mirror these reports from SAP into Excel. So as you can see, these numbers that we have here, for example, this 149 number that I have here, the calculation behind the scenes, this is basically looking at the SAP report and bringing this number here. So the data is protected. If by any chance one of the, common things that we have in Excel is that many times we accidentally delete a number, just by mistake. Unfortunately, I have seen this error in real world scenarios. Once I had a customer that they, by mistake, multiply a number by -1. They were changing the debit and credits nature of the numbers, and they forgot to change it back, and then their financial statements were wrong. And unfortunately, these were closed figures, right? So this part, where we are extracting this data, all of this logic, financial consolidation is running behind the scenes. Right? So if I refresh the data, if I refresh all of this, that 149 will come back, right? So we are not modifying the source of the data. This is a mirror of the report that we have here in ZAP, right? So we can see this 149, which is replicated in this report. Now, the same functionality that we have in that report, where we can slice and dice information, based by companies, or that you can select one or more companies, it's also available here in this report. Now, what I'm going to do, so we have here the company date, budget scenario. These are the same slices that I have in the report: company date, budget scenario, ledger type, and cost center. So these are the same components, right? Now, let's say that this is my source report, and I'm going to keep it like this in this report. I'm going to do other scenarios, but for this exercise, I'm going to name this like as my original report, right? And let's say that I want to start making some modifications. I want to add the budget here, right? But as you see this, if I add any number here and then I, update the report, these numbers will disappear because we are, again, extracting, mirroring the report. We're loading it again. right? So what I'm going to do, I will basically select all of this report. So if I go into this app live, this is an add-in that we have into Excel that we need to install in the App Store. I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to copy with Control C, and I'm going to go into a new page, and I'm going to paste it, right? So I have already here this. Let me just order this so it looks nicer. And now what I'm going to do, I mean, there are more ways of doing this, but I'm just going to hide these two columns. And just to hide them. And I'm going to add here an additional, which is going to be the year-to-date budget, right? Now, let's say that we are working in the budget and a specific department, our controllers, every team within the organization is working in their own personal budget. And that's what happens many of the time, right? All the information is isolated in silos, in different departments, in different Excel files. So I'm going to open one report, and again, this is just for to do something quick and simple for this exercise. I have in this other Excel file, in this other Excel sheet, some budgets. The numbers might make sense or maybe not. So let's just test this out. So as you can see, this is just budgets that I have been just collecting from my different departments, revenue, operations, manufacturing. So I'm going to just copy and paste these budgets that I have here, and I'm going to place them into this Excel file, right? So I'm going to copy here the budgets, and I'm going to rename this as, it's fine, let's just leave it as Excel sheet 2. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do a calculation, right? And the calculation is basically, this is my budget. So I will start looking, the formulas that many times we are familiar with, those look B, look H. So I'm going to just, I have it here already. I made this exercise before the webinar, so hopefully it will work. I'm just going to copy and paste this formula, and it's actually not working. So there we go. Let's see if it works. There we go. So basically what we're doing here, we're doing an X lookup. So we're looking for the gross sales budget that exists within this sheet, and we're bringing that value here, right? So I'm just going to change the format, right? So what is the value here? What are we getting? Let me just make this more beautiful. So what we have here is that, let's say that we are doing adjustments in the budget. Let's say that, here this number, it shouldn't be 12,000. I'm just going to, for this purpose, just make it 0. If I just change this, which is an Excel file, it will automatically reflect that. If the numbers change within our ERP, within the ZAP report, if we refresh this button, the data automatically refresh, these numbers will automatically change, but we will still be keeping that budget, right? So we are starting to build the report to make it more nice looking. We can make formulas that we are already familiar with. For example, here, this should be C3. I'm just going to make the variation. So if the variation is equal to 0, then don't give me 0. Otherwise, just bring me, I'm getting here an error. I don't know why. Maybe I have a space before. There we go. Right, so then I'm getting the variations. So this is quite useful, as I mentioned. Remember the 3 aspects that I showed you many times. It's much more familiar. We are already used to Excel. We are familiar with this formula. So it's simpler, to populate these reports in a solution that we are already, familiar with. Things that sometimes it's harder to do in the ERP. For example, let me see if this formula actually works. So if, for example, this amount is 0, if the budget, if we don't have budget, then what we're going to have is no budget. Otherwise, we will have, this figure. So, this combination of text and formats, that's something that sometimes in a BI solution we cannot have. And, we can always have within this platform, adding this conditional formatting, which might be figures that we are already familiar with, right? So this will be my new, I'm going to rename this sheet. I'm going to rename this as my P and L statement plus budgets, right? And I'm quite sure you have much more expertise than I do in Excel. You are much more knowledge in what formulas we can, sorry, oops, which formulas we can do. But this is one example, adding specific formats. As I mentioned many times, we want to create a IFRS formatting, and we cannot have that structure in a standard BI report. This is what we will be able to do here, right? So I'm just making some cosmetics. So this is the first exercise that I wanted to show you. Again, we have right now, what we have finished here is a profit and loss statement with budgets from a report that we built. So it was literally a couple of minutes from a report that existed in my BI, right? But I didn't have the budgets here, right? So I'm just complementing the data. And then maybe I can use this report as a source to populate these reports. Maybe I don't want to, from all of this data transformation process, I don't want to extract the data from the ERP, but rather from this Excel file that can become eventually, my source to feed my reports from the BI. Now, going back into the second, if I go back into the presentation that I was showing you, I was talking about flexible financial analysis, and the reality is that although many times we wish we have the right data in the systems, sometimes we don't have it, and that's a reality. I'm going to show you, this is a real use case that I built for a customer. Let me see if I can find the file. I have it here. Where this is a customer, and I think the data is all demo data. As you can see, this is having the Excel zapping. This is just connected to a different environment. The customer was telling us, we're building our financial statements, but the challenge that we're finding is that we do projects, right? And we pay for a specific building. We're paying electricity, we're paying gas, we have some, variable costs. We have also some other fixed costs. But when I want to create a profit and loss statement by project, but I don't have the data split by project. One example, and this is the example where I'm going to centralize today, is electricity. They are paying for a whole business or their facilities, electricity. And they get one bill of electricity. However, they want to assign a proportion of that electricity to a specific project. They want to see, 30% of my electricity cost, I am going to allocate those into this specific project. But the reality is that this is a dynamic measure that changes over time. They don't want to have that fixated in the ERP, and they don't want to enter this data into a data warehouse, process the data. They want to do this much more for a kind of interactive reporting, right? Where they can change the numbers on the fly, and they can say what would the outcomes be of that report. So many times we have that need. There are two components here. We don't have all the data in the system. And the second one, we want an interactive report, right? So what happened? These reports, as you can see, they are extracted directly from SAP. So these are basically trial balance, where this is just a portion of the trial balance of the expenses, just to illustrate this functionality. And then what they do, what we normally do when we want to create a financial statement. So in this case, I'm extracting a trial balance. So what we do is that we group the accounts, right? And then we start summing. And that's what they are doing here. We are grouping the accounts. These are the maintenance, and we're dividing here by vendors. We are then having the gas tracker, and then we are dividing the gas by, the different floors that we have in the building. We have water. This is a specific department, electricity. But now, what happens with electricity? And electricity in the database, we only have one single bill. right? One single bill for electricity. What you can see here, this is the information that comes directly from my database. But as I mentioned, we want to allocate, and this is just for projects, right? We don't really need to be very strict about this, and we want to make some assumptions. We don't want to allocate all of these 17,000 into, all the like, one project. We want to divide this maybe by floors. For example, maybe in the first floor is project one, in this is project two. So what we are doing, all of these calculations, I'm creating here a proportion. I'm saying, of all of this cost, which is 2,000, 7,000, 207,000, I'm going to allocate 5% to, the floor one, 5% to this floor two. So I'm just doing here calculations on the fly. So I'm using this data that I trust and I'm breaking down into the figures. And then after that, I'm populating a financial statement, right? But that financial statement, let's say that I'm building the profit and loss statement for project A. And project A should include floor 3, floor 5, and floor 7, which are the ones that I'm highlighting here. So basically, I'm summing a proportion. So, these kind of calculations, you wouldn't be able to do in a BI, right? It doesn't provide you with that flexibility to play and to say, what instead of 83 also includes me. Here I'm making that, let's say that I realized, also includes me. And apologize. Also include me, for example, this 31. Right? So this is on the fly, and this number changes. And this number that I have here is populating. Let me find it. It hit from me. Where is my profit and loss? It's populating this profit and loss statement, right? So this figure that I have here, instead, what I can do is this electricity tracker of this financial statement I have here, it will look into this figure, right? So you can see that automatically we can have these templates in Excel that are, consuming information from data that we trust. And as I mentioned, this data is coming from our data warehouse, it's coming from our trusted data model. So this is one scenario that we have and one way that we have to consume the data, right? Now, just expanding a little bit into this, for this session, I built this. I wanted to show you all of these reports that I have here. Many times we have those scenarios where we need to send a report back, but not in a PDF file, because I'm quite sure you have already seen. Let me just open one. I'm sure you have already seen report packs in Zap, right? That we can create PDF files and send this automatically based on two things, right? We can send this automatically based on a business alert or on a schedule. But what if we want to see, send a report back in an Excel file where, we have different reports. Here we have a trial balance. Then we have a second one where we have a balance sheet statement, a profit and loss statement, and a profit and loss statement by month, right? What if we need to add comments? For example, let's say that I'm analyzing this statement and then I want to say, my operating expenses are too high for June 2025. So I want to add a comment here and I want to say, hey, how do I comment here? Please review this number. Please review this figure, right? So I apologize my spell, but and let's say that I refresh the data refresh tomorrow, I still have these comments, right? This is something common that, again, you cannot write data in that way into the BI unless you have the appropriate permissions. What if you want to add here a different column, right? Like you want to add comments in this way. Like, for example, hey, we need to add the forecast. That's something that you can do. So, we can build these statements. But what happens if we want to add a new one? I showed you that in order to download, from SAP, we have the capability to click here and to just get the SAP Live add-in. But what if we, to this statement that we have here, let me just create a new sheet. We want to add a new report, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click here into this show query section. 1 second, let me do it in, because this I already have an exercise open, so I don't want to spoil it. Let me go into the profit and loss statement, into this one. That is the exercise that we were building. What do we want to add an additional report? What we're going to do, I'm going to click into the supply IVN. I'm going to go into the query section, and I'm going to click on this part. I'm already attaching a report, which is called the profit and loss statement for the webinar. And I'm going to add a new report. So I'm going to click here. And here I will see the total list of reports that I have. So let's say that I want to add a trial balance. I keep with the misspells, trial balance. Let's say that I want to add this one. I hope it contains some data. Or this one, I think this might show data. And I'm going to load this report, right? So that's how, it's as simple as that. Reports that already exist in SAP, we're just populating and bringing here. So that's basically how I build this report that I have already open, right? This helps us also for cross-functional reporting. If you want to do something for supply chain and financials, and we need to bring information from inventory, this is a very easy way to bring all the raw data that we require for this analysis. Now, what I'm going to show you, there are two flavors here. Right now, what I have been showing you is how we can bring a replica of a SAP report into Excel. But what if we had the capability to consume the same data warehouse in the report, right? What if we had the capability to drag and drop, measures and dimensions, the same we do in Power BI, the same we do in ZAP, but into Excel. So we have the power to analyze the information in the solution that we like. All of us looking at the same version of the truth. So this is still a preview, that I have. So bear with me if we find any errors during this process. But basically, what I have here, I have the same dimensions, which is the same measures and dimensions. I always make the analogy that creating a report is like cooking. If we want to prepare a good dish, we need to have the right ingredients. And that's exactly what we have here, right? So if I'm building a financial statement, I will go to the general ledgers. I will drag and drop from here my actual amounts into the column section. And then if I want to break this information down by the accounts, the same hierarchies that I have in ZAP, in this case, I was using the balance sheet statement. If I want to drag and drop this, the balance sheet statement hierarchy here, you can see that I have here. So this is my balance sheet statement. I have assets, current assets, non-current assets. If I want to expand this hierarchy, for example, I want to see what are my current assets. I want to expand this level. Now I can see, which are the structure that I have. And again, all of this was built within my data warehouse. So within this functionality, I have that capability to expand levels, collapse levels. And now I'm seeing, the information on the account level. So see how in a matter of minutes, I was able to produce a balance sheet statement from, an information that I had in my cube using Excel. What if I want to break this down by financial dimensions? What if I want to break this down? I think for this specific, I think it's product lines, the one that I'm actually using. This is the financial dimension that I have here. So let me just find it. I have here product lines. What if I wanted to use this as a filter, right? But I want to have this as a multi-select slicer. So see, all of these, I only have aluminum, cement, cereals, coffee, So see how in a very short period of time, I was able to create a balance sheet statement, by financial dimensions. Because again, at the end of the day, we're bringing information on components that we trust, right? So here it might be just about selecting the proper balance state. So what use cases, for example, we have seen, I'm quite sure, I mean, this is the second use cases. This is the second way of how we can actually use this Excel live add-in, using this to build reports using the same structure. And also something that I talked a little bit about is how can we also expand, functionality here within the ABI. Sometimes, and I'm sure I have shown you this report before, or if not, I think this is one of the greatest examples of what is the value of a data warehouse. I'm going to open some business cases and I'm going to show you a cash flow forecasting, right? Okay, so this is a cash flow forecasting. So what I want to highlight here is that this is a complex report that requires a data warehouse. Why? One of our customers was telling us, your reports are great, but I want to forecast how my cash flow will look like in the next 13 weeks. The problem that they had is that part of the report, the information, was sitting within their ERP, but another part was part of a master plan. They were going to hire people. Those transactions does not exist in a database, right? They were going to invest in machinery, renew certain, machines, and those transactions are part of a plan that are not yet posted in the ERP. So what they wanted to do, they wanted to combine information not from multiple data sources, but even from multiple places within the same ERP. So what we have here first is my opening balances, right? Which this is information that comes directly from my banks, from the financials, the ledgers, right? The general ledgers. But when we analyze the receivables and the payables, we realize that, okay, these receivables and these payables, the expected payment date does not exist in the ledgers, right? It exists in the accounts receivable ledgers and the accounts payable ledgers. So we are unifying data. And then these other cash events are those, investments that we are going to do in the future that are not yet posted in the RP. So we're integrating information from 3 different data sources, which is actually quite complex behind the scenes. And we are forecasting so we can tell you how your data will look like in the next 13 weeks, right? So this is for a 13-week cash flow forecast. And this is functionality that we have, and this is things that we can analyze over time. But what happens for more complex analytics, right? So what we are doing here is already very complex, right? It's already, a massive amount of effort integrating information from multiple places into one centralized place. But what would it happen for a bigger project? Let's say that we have a project where we want to bring the future value to present value. That formula is more complex. I can do it in the BI, maybe, yes, I should be. But what if there was an easier way? What if I could do that using Excel files? So, for example, this Excel file, this is just a functionality that exists in Excel. And let's say that here I have my projected cash flows for the next 10 years. Here I have the present value. These formulas, are not straightforward in the BI. And here you have also the present value for. But what if I want to find a specific value? For example, what if I want to get, right now I have this is my present value of these future cash flows with an internal rate of return of 1%. But what if I want to know what is the balancing point where, the total value and the present value is 0? I want to know what is this internal rate of return should be, so the total amount of my present values are equal to 0. So Excel has these functions that we can get this information, let's say, from the SAP report, so it can be a live connection. And these crazy features that we have in Excel that are hardly seen in BI solutions, where I go to the data, I can go into what if analysis, I can go seek, and I can say, hey, provide me. So I want this cell to be 0, by changing my internal rate of return, right? So when I click on this, it's using a lot of calculations behind the scenes, some complex analysis. Sometimes we can use linear regressions. So it's actually, again, I'm going to do it because I clicked on the wrong button. I'm going to go into the what if analysis, goal seek. I want to change this value. I want to make it 0 by changing this cell, right? And then I can see that it's 8.2. So again, all of this idea is how we can expand the functionality that we have from a BI solution, and how we can even consume the data using Excel. So just to get back where we started, financial teams around the world, and that's something that we cannot neglect. We are still fighting and wrestling, many times with data spreadsheets. And the main challenge that we have is that information is isolated in many different places, right? So what we have seen today is that there's another way, right? When you combine ZAP and with Excel, you have all the kit that you require for this analysis. So now you are connected to a well-governed, trustworthy data, where you can fully format profit and loss statements. You can add budgets. You can forecast. You can make complex analysis. So this is not only about saving you time. It's also about making better decisions faster, with the confidence that we trust the data. So this is what I have prepared for today's session. So if you have any questions, I'm going to hand over to Rohit. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the chat box and we can go through them.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, David. Thanks for that. I think what we're trying to showcase here, we're trying to make Excel more powerful. We're not trying to take people away from Excel. All right. So we've got a question, David. Will the refresh all feature in Excel? So if you want to switch to Excel for me, David, will the refresh all feature in Excel refresh all of the ZAP reports in the workbook? That's the question. So if you go to ZAP Live add-on.
Yeah, that is correct. So, for example, this report has multiple reports. If I click on this refresh, I can refresh only this table, or I can refresh all the reports that I have within this
Brilliant.
report.
Brilliant. Hope that um, uh, helps you and answers your question. Another question is how can we have this add-in in our environment? So basically, the add-in is actually available within Excel. So if you go to David, since you're in Excel, can you show the add-in section, please?
Mm-hmm. Let me see. I forgot where I can find it. Give me. I'm just
I
going to
think it's
play.
go home and yeah. So that area that you see add-ins, you get all the add-ins. And if you search for the add-in Zap, we will appear. The only thing obviously you do need is Zap as the connector, which connects to your data on your ERP and finance system. So we connect with quite a few at the moment. So if that is of interest, please reach out to us separately. I'll make a note of who's asked the question and I'll reach out to you separately and just understand how that works. But basically, the connection of all of our Excel to your finance system or ERP system is through ZAP, which is the data model, semantic model, which is available, and that's how it allows. Today, you can use a report on ZAP as a data source. And as David demonstrated separately, we also have the whole cube. So the whole data model. So think about being able to combine sales and GL and inventory in one place and having all of that information in a pivot table format. That's possible today. What we are also working on as an enhancement is being able to refresh data. So this refresh data is currently going to ZAP and pulling. So ZAP pulls from your finance system on a regular basis, and then our refresh goes and pulls that. But future state is that you will go refresh from the GL transaction table from your source finance system. So we are focusing very hard on month-end close and where people process journals and want to see it like this onto their report. We're focusing on that, especially with our Excel add-in, so you can get not hours of refresh, but minutes, if possible, even seconds of refresh. Okay. More questions coming up. Can I send these reports to people who don't have licenses in Zap and the reports be static or give errors to the recipient? Can you share the report? Of course you can. It's Excel functionality you can share. Will the report be static? Yes, it will be static. If they have a license, then it will be dynamic. So they can also then refresh and everything. We actually have a very interesting case with a customer. They wanted to turn this into a complete report pack for their business. They had 45 tabs on Excel using this, and they built those 45 tabs, and the data was coming from Zap data models and everything. And in order to share, they use that as a report pack. So yes, static will be data will be static if they don't have a license. It will be dynamic if they did have a license. Okay. The next question is how to create reports in Zap. It's probably a session we'll need to have with yourself separately. But yeah, I mean, David is getting quite excited. I mean, if you want, you can build a simple sales report, David, whilst I talk. But it's a cube. It's a complete drag and drop exercise that you're able to connect and work with. So I'll reach out to you separately and let's arrange a session where we can showcase this to you. Okay. The next question is, are you able to insert the Excel file in a publication? So see, the publication functionality within Zap, that does not change. That publication functionality remains the same, where you're taking a report and you're sending it as an Excel or a PDF to people, and those people don't need to be users because that is static data. So that publication does not change. This is different, where you're actually using the Excel connector with live dynamic data and then passing to somebody. And if they have the license, they can do the same thing as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'll make a note to reach out to you separately and then answer your question. Good. I'm just looking at other stuff. I believe we have answered all questions. Um, yes, I've got somebody saying they already have it and they want to see it. Absolutely. I'll get your account manager to reach out to you and work with you. Thank you so much. Um, you insert a link to the Excel file in the publication? Yes, you can. I think let's talk about it separately. Let me understand what you're thinking of doing there, so we support you in the best way possible. The way I see it is with the Excel add-in feature now coming out and becoming so robust, I actually, unless it is, I see the publication rules only being used to send out PDF documents, static PDF. So more like brand management reports and stuff like that to you want to send to your board or you want to send to some execs. I see that moving in that direction. Sending an Excel file as a publication, I think you're better off sending them the Excel workbook itself because of the possibilities now this provides with the Excel added. So let's have a chat. Let's understand what you're thinking and let's try a few things for you to work. But yeah, thanks, David. I see you very quickly built a sales report for whoever asked the question as well. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to give it another couple of minutes in case anyone has any questions.
So, some something that I would love to ask, for all attendees is like, this is a feature, right? And I would love to also hear from you what other use cases you find, right, where you would love to use Excel, or you have, this reporting solution, you would like to use Excel. So it'll be interesting to hear, what other use cases you have. I'm happy to expand more on that.
Definitely, David. In fact, I had one CFO we work with who basically used the Excel add-in to build the management reports in Excel and then used ChatGPT on top to build comments and then sent it as a board pack to his board team. And it just made us realize that obviously, look, AI is everywhere, guys. In case you're not dabbling into it already, highly recommend that. I mean, we ourselves are getting into this not just from a product perspective, but just from a business and a usage perspective, trying to find best ways to get efficiencies and also become better at what we're doing. So highly recommend. But I thought that was a cool way of doing that, and we're planning a session where AI and Excel can be talked together from CFO's language. So we are planning to do that. So hold out for that whenever that happens. Right, I think that's about it. We've answered all questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Like we mentioned, the recording will be sent for you to review. The teams will reach out to talk through the detail. But again, thank you so much for your time, and please feedback if there are areas you would like us to talk about. If there is a particular ERP report or an ERP section in terms of reporting that you would like to talk about, and how businesses are using that. So the recording will be sent to your email. So you've registered, so automatically you'll get the recording. So we'll send you the recording through the email, and somebody from the sales team will touch base as well for those who've asked the questions to help them, use the product better. Anyways, thank you so much for the time, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love some feedback, but yeah, plan is to continue doing some of these moving forward. Cheers. Take care. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thank you.